Alright, we are back again, and we've moved on from shapes and zooming and centering and that kind of stuff in the last section, and we're going to move into pop-ups and icons. I may end up splitting this into a couple videos, particularly because pop-ups get a little bit crazy in just how much you can do, and same with icons. It's a little bit confusing, but I figure we should take it on right away since it's absolutely what everybody wants to do with their map, is have custom pop-ups, custom icons, blah blah blah. So we're going to have to make sure we create them properly. There are a couple different ways to create pop-ups in Leaflet. They pretty much all are just fine, but just so we're all on the same page making pop-ups one way. You can obviously fill them with all kinds of custom content, and a lot of that is going to come from your data. We're going to move more and more into that as we move into advanced topics, although at this point we're pretty much just going to fill them with string data. But you'll get the idea as we move along. Again, content from marker, that can be aside from just the pure string entered content. And then we're going to look on custom styling, and that goes for the pop-ups and the icons themselves. And again, pop-ups and icons, very dynamic aspects of maps. They're very user-oriented aspects of maps, and so that's what we're going to focus a lot on here. So let's come back to our map here, and we have our shapes, and I'm just going to, they have pop-ups attached to them here, this bind pop-up. So in Leaflet, that's one way to make a pop-up, is you just attach a little bind pop-up call. When you create a shape, you just stick a bind pop-up on the end of it with some information in it. And there it is. It'll show up, no problem. So that's one way to do it, and we are going to sometimes do that. You'll find yourself doing that 'cause it's very easy, but a lot of time we may not do them quite that way. So let's delete everything here, and we're just going to start from scratch, and we're going to add a point instead of marker. So here's UI layers. Again, I'm back in the documentation for Leaflet and just going here, and here's a marker. So there's a usage example. I just copy that. Again, I'm going to take my coordinates at the center of my map so that I make sure the marker is at the right place. And just after, there's this add to map. Now I need to make sure that this add to is actually the same as the variable name that I gave my original map. And I don't like the name my map. For me, I'm really used to using just map as the variable. Actually, delete that. So I just made sure it's referring properly to adding it to the right map. Otherwise, you'll get just an error of like an undefined. It's trying to, the method doesn't exist or something like that. So I've put that in. I put my coordinate, made sure the coordinate was in the right order, and saved. And here is my pop-up, and it just sits there. That's the default pop-up from Leaflet. Looks pretty good, honestly. It obviously looks pretty standard since you've probably seen this kind of thing around before. But it works. So from here, why don't we try a little bit of options around. Actually, why don't we just try bind pop-up first. So bind pop-up, and then we put some hi text. Boom. And we saw before there was also an open pop-up method, which will open it on load of your map. And there it is, open on load. I don't really want that. It's not my favorite thing, so I'll just leave it as that. So there we go. We have our basic pop-up and our basic marker. So first, let's do a little bit of marker customization. So a lot of time people want a custom icon, and there is so much opportunity to do so many different types of custom icons. You can use things called SVGs, vector graphics, or you can use images. You can use a lot of different things to make your markers. You can even just use circles rather than using points like this. We're going to move more into some SVG related stuff a little later on, but for now we're going to work at like basically using images, so that actually may be an SVG file, but we're going to load it. We're going to be loading images like directly, in this case, directly as our marker icon. So when it comes to marker icons for maps, there is a lot of free sources for that. There's some of these ones at this flat icon place. A lot of these you have to give attribution when you're making them. For like, if I download one of these, it wants to make sure that I credit the author. So, in this case, I don't really mind, but some of your projects you may not want to. So I've downloaded this. It's actually an SVG file, which is great. There's also some sites like this, map icons, and this is specifically for Google Maps. I quite like these. These are very pretty. They're a little more complicated to implement just because it's a little bit custom code. It only works for Google Maps API. But you can take a look at this. I just saw briefly there it says it may be deprecated as a project, but look around. There's also some more things like this Noun project. I believe they have a paid service for thousands and thousands of different icons. And one of the classics is map icons. You have probably seen these around. They are free. You can use these however you want, and they're just PNGs. So I'm just gonna grab one of these. I'm gonna grab the tree, download it, and I'm gonna place it. Where are we? We are over at this folder. There's our index.html. I'm gonna place that tree PNG there, and I'm also gonna put the map marker SVG in there. Just a couple different ones so that we can get a handle on loading in icons. Now let's head back to Leaflet, and we're going to go to Tutorials again. And down a little ways we get markers with custom icons. And these are fairly complex ones. Let's just look at this for a second. You can see there's actually shadows as well as the leaflet icon itself. And they come in multiple colors. And you can see again we can get this whole example standalone and look right at the code that's going on if we want, but let's go back and look at how they walk us through. So we're not going to do shadow here. That's one thing that's going to be different. So here we are creating an icon. Marker icons are defined by l.icon objects. So instead of having, for instance, an l.marker, we're going to have an l.icon. And they have a bunch of options here. And we can see here that when we're giving that icon to a marker, it's just an option. So that's pretty straightforward. Why don't we say, I'm going to make 2 markers. I'm going to test each of the icons. And I'm going to give this one a slightly different geographic reference. 48. Okay. And then we know it's going to be something like this. Icon, let's say green icon. And then I'm going to have the other icon be a black icon. And they're slightly different, as you recall from us loading them in, mapmarker.svg and tree.png. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to make our green icon first, since it's already named that. And we're not going to do any of the shadow stuff, so let's get rid of every line that has to do with a shadow. So here we are. We have the icon URL, the size, the anchor, and the pop-up anchor. Those are all fairly important things for you to know. So first of all, the URL in this case is just going to be tree.png. It's right in the same folder. So that's fine. Now for the icon size, we actually have to find the size of that marker. So if we go tree PNG, we can see 32 by 37. Okay, so let's make this 32 by 37. So that's X and Y. And let's just load that first of all. Alright, so we don't get anything. So what's the error? Black icon is not defined. Yes, it's trying to load this other one that we did, but we didn't actually define it, so okay, whatever. So here we go. It loaded over there. My coordinate's a little far away. But you can see it's there. The pop-up works, and it's kind of weird. As it moves, it seems to actually move location. You know, it's on the land here, and then it's in the water. So that's obviously a problem, and that's a problem I see very often when people are first doing their mapping. And what that is we're not setting the icon anchor to the right place, because the anchor of the icon is what decides exactly what's on the geographical point, where that marker belongs to geographically. So this is a little bit confusing, but it's just something that you have to get used to thinking in. So for the icon anchor, it's counting kind of like down and over, or over, yeah, it's like over and down from the top left point. So what I mean here is that we're going to be going over about half, and we're going to go down to full 37. And let's just try that. So where is our anchor? So you can see here now it's not moving. Okay. So it's still in that, it's in that one place in the water. Okay. So what we did is we went over 16, because the whole icon is 32 pixels wide. We went over 16, and then down 37 to reach the bottom, the middle bottom, right? That's typically where a lot of icons go, middle bottom. Now when we open our pop-up, a pop-up is in this weird place that doesn't make any sense, and that's because we need to fix our pop-up anchor. And this is again tricky because it's not defined the same way as the icon anchor. It's not from this point we go over and down. Instead, is defined from the icon anchor. Okay, so from the icon anchor, which is right here at the bottom of the marker, we don't want to go right or left at all. We want to go straight back up, and let's say we want to put the icon near the top, like right in the top of the crown of the tree. So if I go that, and then I'm going to go minus 30, because the icon is 30 pixels, 37 pixels high. So minus 30 is, most of the way up there. So let's look over, and now when we click it, it sits at the right place that I wanted. It looks a little funny, and the icon is, correctly shaped and sized. Okay, so that's great. So that's one icon. You can see how it involved a little bit of messing around to pass that right. So let's do the black icon now. And change that. We need to change which image it's pointing to. So in this case, it's SVGs. Okay, and let's just try it and see what happens. So it looks like it just loads right at the right size. And is it moving? It doesn't seem to be moving. It seems like it's kind of in the right place. So did we just get lucky? Is that just awesome or what? Part of this is SVGs, because SVGs will readapt themselves to whatever size you give them. That's one of the beauties of using SVG. If we go to this, you can see its dimensions are actually blank, and that's because that's the nature of what's called a vector graphic. It scales to match the size you want to give it. So in this case, we could just, we could probably just drop a lot of these. Let's see what happens if we do that. I bet you maybe it'll just break. So it's huge. Now it's just constantly the same size, and it's like kind of weird. So clearly you have to give it a size, otherwise it doesn't know what to do. But you could give it a different size. So let's say we wanted to make it a little larger. Let's go double the height. So that should be 64, and that'll be 70. 74, is that? 62. Yeah, okay. And then we'll make this 32, and the height, again, will be 74, and then we'll make this minus 70. So this should be a little bigger now. There we go. Big pop-up. Again, that's a little bit of a weird place. Maybe we don't want it to quite be there. Let's make it 50. There we go, right in the middle. That looks nice. So that's some nice marker styling. So that's basically your first lesson in custom icons. Super crucial. And we're going to move on to pop-ups now. Okay, so pop-ups, we have them appearing here, and they have this particular styling, which is nice. They fade in and out. They look pretty good. One gets closed automatically when another one gets added or opened. And you can see we're just adding them through bind pop-up. So we're going to continue to add them through bind pop-up for now. That's a fine way to add them. There's going to be more ways as we move on into more and more complicated things, when we want to refer specifically to certain pop-ups and open them independently, or different kinds of things like that. But in this case, right now, I'm going to focus a little bit on styling them. So we can actually inspect these pop-ups, and we can see that they are just classes with styles that we'll be able to mess with. So there's leaflet-pop-up, and we get a bunch of leaflet content wrapper and stuff like that. So we can mess with it in the inspector here, which is a great way to play around with things. So maybe I don't really like having that much padding in there. It's kind of taking up a lot of extra space it doesn't need. So right here we have this margin around the leaflet pop-up content. If we take that away, see, it gets really small. So maybe we can adjust that. We'll just make the margin just 5 pixels. Yeah, that's okay. I'm pretty okay with that. And there we go. It kind of sits there. Let's inspect again. Okay, and I don't want the border radius either. So on this one, let's see if I call it border radius 0. Okay, so now we have square pop-up. That's nice. And I do like the shadow. You could get rid of the shadow as well. You can see by clicking on and off certain CSS properties, and you could change the shadow. You could make it much larger. You can also see it can change the background. Let's say we want background to be black instead, and then the text to be white. So that's okay, although now the bottom piece there is kind of messed up. So let's see if we can change that too. So it's a little harder to find. So what this actually is, it's another div here with the leaflet pop-up tip container. So we can maybe color that. We will have to actually be a little bit clever about it, because giving the background is black actually does something totally unexpected. It fills this whole area as black. So what he actually is it's actually a border color. Oh, maybe not quite. Let's see. We may have to do just a little playing. So here's the tip right there. So let's get rid of this border color here. So here in the tip we have the background white. My bad. We can actually make the background black easily like that, and it works. On some of the other, it may be in other places they use borders sometimes to do this kind of pointy thing. Anyway, in this case, no big deal. So let's go here. I kind of wanted to modify this a little more, maybe make the font size 20 pixels. There, that's nice. Again, nothing really amazing here going on. You could add a background URL. You could add a little bit of something else, but let's just copy a lot of these. So we have some styles on leaflet pop-up content wrapper. We will make a style, and this could be also a separate style sheet if you preferred with some CSS. We go here and we're going to copy over some of the properties that we made. There we go, and there was a bit more of that. So let's go back to here. We also gave the leaflet pop-up content a margin of 5 pixels. And we gave the pop-up tip a black background. And let's reload and make sure that this all works. Yeah, looks great. Looks very good. We can also get rid of this thing if we want by just doing it, making that display none, for instance, if we want. I think we can also add it later as an option when we create a pop-up independently. But for now, if we needed a fast solution, we would just do that. And now pop-up's only closed by clicking off. So great. Now if we wanted to add a little bit more custom content, we're going to be doing a lot more of this as we go throughout. But you should be able to just add in HTML right off the bat. So if we go, for instance, to where we're doing this, if we, let's say we wanted a list in there, or yeah, just an image. So let's go get a placeholder, or yeah, let's go get placeholder.com. It's a nice site to just get your sample image. There we go. And we're going to put a source of the image there, like that. And let's see what that's going to do for us. So we see there's a big image. Obviously the pop-up is kind of screwy. It didn't quite hold the image size correctly, so we're going to have to adapt something here. So why don't we make the image a little smaller first of all. So make it maybe I could just modify this so that it's only 100 by 50. Okay. So now when it loads, it's still sticking out from everything. But we can just, like any typical way that we would do these things, you can see it has a width of 51 that's kind of stuck at. Alright, so when we do this, we're doing it with bind pop-up, and that limits us just slightly. So we're actually going to try initializing one of these in its standard way through something called the pop-up. So there is the l.popup, just like we've made other things. You can see here they have bind.popup. But you sometimes want to make one with its own options. So let's do a pop-up here, and we can see it has a latitude, longitude, everything. So in this kind of pop-up, we can actually provide options to it. And we're going to work a lot more with this, so I'm just doing this for now to get us kind of set and going here. So in this case, we can maybe pass it this HTML. Sorry. Okay. And I don't really care if this breaks. Doesn't really matter. And we're going to put this HTML right in there. Again, we have that image. Okay. And let's reload this. So you can see it's opened and it is now the right size. Partly this is just because it's a different method, partly it's just luck. You're going to get things working a little differently in different circumstances. So let's make it, and you can see we have a 350 wide. So here we'll add the options and we'll make it maximum, I don't know, 400. And now it encapsulates that whole thing. But now that pop-up is not actually tied to the rest of the page. And you can also see that now this one seems to be holding it a little better. So you can see this pop-up might be something that is like working across different pop-ups, or is it messing with something? This one still works okay. So you can see how it works with pop-ups being a little bit jumpy in terms of styling and just what options you're giving them. So generally what I would recommend is having one pop-up that you create, and then you call it on each of the different, you attach it to each of the different markers. You can just say bind pop-up and actually pass this pop-up right in here. And let's see how that works. There we go. We can see it passes it right in. And this is really nice because then we can set our options in one place. Ultimately, we're going to be doing even more with this. We're going to be giving them dynamic options, so we may be creating these individually. There's a lot of different aspects. You're going to be setting the content separately, just have one pop-up, and whenever a marker is clicked, we set the content of it using something like this, rather than binding the pop-up. That's actually how we're normally going to be doing it. Create one pop-up, just have it sit here, and then whenever we click a pop-up, click a marker, we create some content relevant to that marker inside the pop-up. But I just wanted to get you a sense of knowing a couple different ways to set pop-ups, create them, give them content, style them. You're going to be doing a lot more complicated things. But remember, you can add in any custom HTML you want, style it directly from your style sheet. It's very straightforward compared to some other mapping APIs like Google Maps. Alright, so in the next section, we're going to move on a little more to GeoJSONs and some slightly simpler and faster topics, but other ones that are very crucial for your interactive mapping.